Testing. Good morning. Testing.
Good morning and welcome to Unity Church on this Sunday morning. It is so good to see all of you here. I'm the Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair. It is a privilege to serve this congregation as your senior minister. I'm joined up front this morning by our Minister of Congregational Care, Shay MacKay, by our Worship Associate, Meg Arnosti, by our Hallman Ministerial Intern, Amy Brunell, by our Director of Music Ministries, Ahmed Ansaldua, by Kai and Martha up there in the booth, by everybody that comes together every Sunday morning to make this worship service possible. It is so good to gather together once again. If this is your first time joining us here at Unity Church, welcome. We are so glad that you're here. If you've been coming here a long time, welcome back. We're glad to see you. If you're joining us online, we're glad to not see you, but we're glad to know that you are with us right in that camera right there or right there. We can feel you with us every Sunday, knowing that we are connected with people in this room and outside of this room. Whoever you are, whatever brings you to this place, wherever you're heading next, know that all of who you are, your gifts and your wounds are welcome in this place. We hope that you will find Unity Church to be a place that helps you live a life of integrity, service, and joy. If you are visiting us today, you will find in the pew in front of you a visitor card. If you would be so kind as to fill that out, that'll let us know who you are, what's brought you here, what you're looking for, a little about you. If you're joining us online, send us an email with that same information. We would love to get in contact with you. A couple announcements this morning. So right after the service, we have our program for visitors and interested people that happens in the center room, finding yourself at Unity, just that way. The topic this morning is a Q&A with the minister. So if there are questions that you've been wanting to ask me for a while, I will not be in the receiving line. I will be down there in the center room after the service today. Other announcements. Right after the service, we also have the artist for the parish hall, Carly Bearseason, in the parish hall after the service this morning. She would love to chat with you about her art. She's got cards and prints for sale. It has been a joy to wander the halls with her art around for the last month, and it will be good to meet her as well. The last announcement is a change to the schedule. So if you look at this week at Unity, the Wellspring Wednesday program is listed as me talking about community organizing. I will not be there. I will be in Boston for a UUA board meeting. And my good friend and colleague Terry Bernor offered to come pinch hit for that evening. Terry, you might remember from this summer when she preached here. She's the executive director of the Minnesota Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Alliance, or Moose Jaw. She will also be talking about what it means to do interfaith organizing in this moment, how this moment calls for us not to stay in siloed individual congregations, but to join with each other so that we are more effective in the world, and we better realize our value of interdependence. All right, that's the announcements. So with that, take a moment, set aside everything you came in here holding. It'll be there. You can pick it up. But for the next 65 minutes or so, be present here as we gather in song, in spoken word, in meditation, and in prayer, as we begin worship together with the ringing of our bell.
This welcome is written by Sarah Getty McNeil. Come in from the crisp morning air outside. Come in wearing the autumn sunlight on your face. Come carrying the turning of the seasons in your heart. Whatever and however the greatness of life is speaking to you now, you are welcome here in our circle of friends. Please join me in reading the words in your order of service as we light the chalice flame. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith, the light of truth, and the warmth of love. Our opening hymn is number 10, Immortal Love. I try to imagine myself in these situations. I walk into a grocery store and people stare at me with a scowl of disapproval. I am often followed by the clerk who's keeping an eye on me. When I drive through my neighborhood, I'm always worried that I'll be pulled over and harassed. I drive in fear. I try to buy a home, and I am told I cannot live in most neighborhoods because they are unavailable to people who look like me. And when I finally have the courage to go to a bank and get a loan for a house in my own neighborhood, the banker says I don't qualify for reasons I don't understand. I imagine what it would be like if my son, as a teenager, is accused of raping a girl in his high school, put in handcuffs, and thrown in jail, even though he is innocent. What if I look for a job and am repeatedly turned away, told there are no openings? How would this make me feel about myself, about the police, about the majority of people who live around me whose skin is a different color from mine? What if my mother and father got the same treatment, and so did my grandparents? What if I had heard stories all my life of how we are not wanted? I try to put myself in these scenes to have empathy for people who live with racism, because I have not experienced these things. If I did not read and listen, I would be unaware of discrimination in Minnesota. We pride ourselves on being Minnesota nice, but we are also tribal and segregated. Many of us do not see or know about the terrible racism people continue to experience in our state. And discrimination such as redlining that happened in the past still affects people today. I have been the person who crossed the street if I saw a black man walking towards me. I am the person who only sees people of color when I drive through certain neighborhoods. I have very few friends and acquaintances of color. Now I try to imagine a different scenario where we don't make assumptions based on skin color, where people can live where they want and are accepted for who they are, where police protect all and discriminate against none, where jobs are available based on ability, not skin color, where we address and acknowledge historic racism and how it affects people today. How much better our community would be. I want to help make that vision a reality.
Each time we gather for worship, we set aside a moment to expand the caring ministry of this congregation. We gather here together, trusting that this community is wide enough and deep enough to hold us in both our sorrow and our joy, in our challenges and our celebrations. Together, we recognize the cycle of life and death, the circle of love, compassion, and witness that is at the center of this and every sacred community. Today, we hold in prayer and care a family within our community who are struggling with a recent cancer diagnosis, and we offer our embrace for strength and courage. We stand at the side of all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, with those who live with mental illness, with grief or chronic pain, with addiction. We pray for our neighbors in prison, for those in harm's way, for those who are struggling to stay afloat, and we support those who rise above heartbreak to carry on the work of ending oppression in all of its forms. We celebrate with all who come through these doors with joy in their hearts, because this is a house of joy, and laughter is the sound of a thriving community. And my friends, we grieve. We grieve for the layers of loss, anger, and fear that are present in all parts of our lives and our world. I invite you now to speak into the embrace of this community, whatever you are holding in your hearts this morning. For all that we hold within, among, and beyond ourselves, let us take a moment of shared silence together. Take a deep breath and pray with me. Spirit that moves in all things, move with us now. Move with us as we offer thanks. Thank you for all that we have been given. Thank you for all that we have. Thank you for all that we love. Thank you for all that we take for granted. Move within us and open our minds, our hearts, our spirits. Spirit, offer clarity and truth as we examine the realities of the world we live in. Offer clarity and truth as we examine our role in perpetuating harm. As we explore the best ways to move forward in amends, in apology, and in atonement. And Spirit that makes us holy and whole, move us to courage, move us to comfort, move us to connection and community, drawing our circle ever wider, deepening our embrace, and moving our hands to the shape of justice. May it be so, and amen. Please join me now in our hymn, Hold On, which is printed in your order of service.
Do you have an extra?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Director of Music Ministry, so I'm going to lead you in Hold On, or Keep Your Hand on the Plow. It's not listed in your hymnal. We sang it last week. This is a traditional African-American spiritual. It's originally known as the Gospel Plow, because Keep Your Hand on the Plow is a reference to a verse from Luke, something about he who puts his hand on the plow but looks back is not fit to serve the Lord, or something like that. And the verses originally would have been about Jesus, right? So, but this song took on its own life. It became a big part of the civil rights movement. There are versions by Mahalia Jackson, Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, here's how it's going to go. You are going to respond by singing, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Let's try that. Ready? Keep your hand on the plow, hold on. So I'm going to sing something here. It's going to be something, something, something. And then you're going to respond, keep your hand. Then I'm going to sing it again, and you're going to listen to it, and I hope that you will agree with what I sing. And then you will sing, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. And then you're going to open up and sing nice and loud, and if you can sing in harmony, you're going to sing in harmony. Hold on, hold on. And then, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. So I'm going to sing 3 verses for you, which Reverend Oscar handed to me before the service. And you're all going to stand up as you're willing and able, and we're going to sing it all together. So let's see. Building walls and spreading hate will not make this country great. Building walls and spreading hate will not make this country great. Hold on, hold on. The only chains that we can stand are the chains of hand in hand. The chains that we can stand are the chains of hand in hand. When united, it is clear don't have anything to fear. When we're united, it is clear we don't have to live in fear. One more time. Thank you, everyone.
And I have to get a mic on. Hello. Hi. I just realized my little step is not here. Oscar, any ideas? Huh? I don't know. So I'm a little shorter. Here, I'll go like this. Okay, like that. Like that. I can stand like that. I don't know if this will work, but okay, I'll not get to. Good morning. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Our movement extends beyond the walls of this church to partners with whom we share a common interest. Each week, the larger portion of our offering goes to these community partners. This week, our offering supports Unity's Peace and Justice Scholarship. Our Peace and Justice Scholarship was created to honor the dedicated leadership of Pat Haff and her 12 years of coordinating Unity's community outreach ministry. Thank you. That's amazing. This fund is dedicated to supporting equal access to participation in Unity's pilgrimages and hands-on workshops, serving as an important cornerstone of Unity's community outreach programs. This collection will provide scholarships for congregational justice events and learning opportunities. Will the ushers please step forward? We know that when we lead lives of integrity, service, and joy, generosity is sure to follow. Please give as generously as you are able.
Good morning. My name is Louise Livesay-Al, and I go by she, her pronouns. Last Sunday when we did the dedication of new lives, just like now, because every time I'm in front of you, this is what happens, I found myself choking up over and over. Each child born is one more redeemer. What powerful words that shape a completely different concept of worth in our faith. Each child born has the ability to shape good and bring us closer to the beloved community is such a different message than each child is born a sinner. From the moment we are born, our faith and this church gives us hope and faith in the action of change for the better in each person coming into this world. And we dedicate ourselves to help nurture and support that child in their development and realization of that truth. I remember those moments when my children, Sam and Lily, were each dedicated and framed as a redeemer. And that dedication set the course for my experience with this community in not doing the task of raising my children alone, but as part of a community. We say we strive to love and cherish them in times of struggle as well as gladness. And I have learned we do that not only for our children, but also for each other. The thresholds we celebrate together, the joys and pain we experience in our lives. I have had those times in my life, and Unity has been the place that has supported me unconditionally. When my dad died, that morning, the only place I could think of going was here. I knocked on Rob's door. He came out from his meeting, and he simply held me and let me cry in his arms. When my first marriage came to an end, this is the place that helped me feel whole and supported. There was space for the four of us to still be here, raising our kids together. Jan's words on one Sunday gave me strength to move forward when she said, "Our greatest moments of transformation come from our greatest moments of struggle." Her words have been a talisman of sorts for me walking through hard times in my life. When I found my second chance at love, there was no other place I could imagine celebrating my marriage than here. Mark and I took the committed couples class and were challenged to think deeply about our life together and how we wanted to be to one another, resulting in vows that continue to guide us in our relationship. Last Sunday, we also talked in the dedication about building a community in which our children will grow old and be surrounded by beauty, embraced by love, and cradled in the arms of peace. About a month after I had Sam, an older couple, my first husband and I, met in a class at Unity, saw me at church and said, "You and Michael probably need a date night. Why don't you bring Sam over on Friday evening and we'll watch him and you two can go out." It was the beginning of an incredible relationship together over the years that is still dear to my heart and my children's heart. Ted and Ona Lenz became unanticipated, loving grandparents of choice to my children. Lily still packs her quilt, made by Ona, to bring to college with her. When I think about why I pledge to Unity today, it is not only this partial list of reasons. The list is so long. My mind was spinning about what to talk about, and last Sunday grounded me in what I wanted to say. This place is also because coming here gives me the strength and means to not feel alone in the pain of today's landscape. And it teaches me to also see the beauty in the world at the same time. In the people I see out there, you, who are here with me today, out there in the world, and believe that we can make change in this world beyond these walls together. I feel challenged here to move beyond my comforts, to learn and think about how to change our course. And one of those ways that is kind of big and audacious is facing our past and supporting the work of reparations. We have the opportunity to make a difference for our community and be transformed. This, what I have shared and so much more, is why I pledge dollars here. May we each do our part with joy and see this giving as part of our evangelizing love to meet the deep and abiding hunger in all of us. Thank you.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time to lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time to lead ourselves into the well. It is time
Our reading this morning is from a book that was a reading quote shared with us from the Board of Trustees yesterday, from a book called The Debt by Randall Robinson. Atop the dome of the United States Capitol building stands the Statue of Freedom in the figure of a Native American female warrior clad in a star-festooned helmet and flowing robes. The statue was designed for $3,000 by Thomas Crawford in Rome, Italy in 1856. In 1863, it was cast in bronze in Bladensburg, Maryland, at a foundry owned by Clark Mills, whom the government paid $23,736 for his work. Philip Reed, a slave owned by Mills, was given the responsibility for casting the Statue of Freedom and loading its 5 sections, each weighing more than a ton, onto reinforced wagons for the slow trip to the easy grounds of the Capitol. There, Reed and other slaves reassembled Freedom to make certain that all of its pieces would fit together. The task of assembling Freedom took 31 days. The statue was then disassembled, hoisted, and reassembled by slaves of the tholos and a pedestal on the dome surmounted by a globe. What a fitting metaphor the Capitol Rotunda is for America's racial sorrows, in the magnificence of its boast, in the tragedy of its truth, in the effrontery of its deceit. The House of Liberty, and it was built by slaves.
On January 1st, 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. In the midst of the Civil War between the United States federal government and the Confederacy, the proclamation wrote that all enslaved people in the Confederacy were free, though it notably did not extend to Union states like Maryland, where the Statue of Freedom had just been cast. It was, at least on paper, one of the largest expansions of legal freedom in American history. And less than 1 week earlier, on December 26th, 1862, that same President Lincoln had ordered the largest legal mass execution in American history. 38 Dakota men were killed, were hanged 80 miles southwest of Unity Church in Mankato, Minnesota. 1 week in 1862 holds so much of the foundational brokenness of our collective story. This country that we're in was built on 2 great crimes: the theft of land from the people living here, and the theft of people and their labor that was slavery. Last week we introduced this plow that's sitting on the chancel with me as a symbol of the work that we are yoked to. But the plow itself is a complex symbol. This is a 19th century plow from Minnesota. It was used to till the land of the state, which means it was used to till stolen land. This plow, this specific one that is with us. There is no honest story about agriculture in America that does not touch on the legacy of slavery. Agriculture is about the rhythms of nature, of working to cultivate and grow, but it has also so often been about extraction, about taking without what economists dryly call externalities, costs borne out of sight of those that are making the decisions. out of sight often because they choose not to see. We talk a lot in this space about what it means to build the beloved community. It's the vision that grounds our work as a church, the idea that the world as it should be drives our work in the world as it is. We do that because we are a storytelling species. Humans make meaning out of narrative, and the beloved community is a story about our future, a story about what could be. And the stories we tell about the world, either the future or the past, stories point us to who we want to be, either stories in the future or stories in the past. And sometimes they're naive stories that don't grapple with the complexity of the world, even in a particular state that we live in, right? Where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. But what does it mean then to imagine a future together when the stories of what has led us to this point are fractured? Garrison Keillor's foundational story about Lake Wobegon was that it was founded by Unitarian missionaries who came to convert the Ojibwe people through the power of interpretive dance. I mean, funny, maybe, but either profoundly naive of the history of this state or profoundly missing the point. How do we reconcile ourselves in the state of Minnesota nice, but also the state of the Dakota 38 and the state of George Floyd? To me, part of the answer comes from covenant. So covenant is a religious tool. It's the place where practice and theology meet in our lives. Covenants are promises, often to each other, sometimes to God, that are meant to guide who and how we are together. In Hebrew scripture, it is the covenant between God and the Israelites that binds the community together as they leave slavery in Egypt. And the founding documents of the United States are a kind of covenant that all are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When we welcome new members into this church, we recite a covenant written by the second minister of this church in 1875. As those who believe that the religious life means the thankful, trustful, loyal, and helpful life, we join ourselves together, name, hand, and heart, as members of Unity Church. These covenants are obligations that we are yoked to, the voluntary commitments that we talked about last week. And covenants are also broken. Now, this is not a religious tradition or a pulpit where we preach sin and brimstone. The Universalist tradition of this church is much more interested in talking about blessing than talking about sin. But it is often true that looking at the stories of our individual and collective lives, we miss the mark. The human capacity to profoundly miss the point, or to fail to live up to our aspirations, is part of every single one of those covenants that we talked about. The story, the narrative in the Hebrew scripture is just a long one of covenants broken and renewed. America has always been trying to live up to the aspirations of its founding documents. We'll leave whether or not we're living up to our covenant. The role of the church, then, is to call us to a different story, to call us to restoration and repair, to heal from broken stories into something new. This is the prophetic voice from Amos crying out, "I despise your festivals, but let justice roll down like waters," to Martin Luther King standing at the Lincoln Monument in Washington, D.C. on the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. And on that day, what he said was, "When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. And instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given us a bad check, which has come back marked insufficient funds. So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. Covenant calls us back to our highest aspirations, not ignoring the times that we have fallen short, but asking us to repair what is broken, to tell a different story going forward. Unity Church, this congregation, was founded in 1872 in Saint Paul, 10 years after 38 Dakota men were killed in Mankato, 9 years after the Dakota Nation was exiled from this state, less than a decade. It's 2025 right now, so 10 years ago, Mark Dayton was the governor of Minnesota. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders were locked in a tight primary to be the Democratic nominee for president. The point here is that for the people that founded this church, the Dakota War and the Emancipation Proclamation were not historical abstractions. They were current events. And when the congregation left downtown St. Paul a generation later, the members built a new building on Summit Hill. This room that we're in right now, nestled among the stately Victorian mansions built by industrialists and investors whose fortunes were built through extraction, through turning forests and mountains into lumber and ore. This jewel box of a church that we have inherited was built by a system that is, profoundly unjust. So what, preacher, are we going to do about it? We have an assignment as a church, our promissory note that we're trying to live up to. We, the members of Unity Church, understand the interconnected roots of oppression and yoke ourselves to the demands, sacrifices, and hard work of anti-racism, multiculturalism, and climate and economic justice. That's what the congregation, that's what you collectively articulated last spring as what would guide our work going forward. We'll understand the interconnected roots of this moment, telling the story of the Dakota 38. And we'll yoke ourselves to the demands, sacrifices, and hard work of justice, particularly and in an explicit shift from what has gone before to economic justice. Because if the two great crimes, the great injustices of American history, slavery and the genocide of the native inhabitants, are racial, then those crimes have been expressed in economic terms. The theft of land and the theft of labor. And any beloved community that we imagine and build on this place without reckoning with that will be built on sand. So 7 years ago, in 2018, longtime Unity member Helena Currier passed away and left the church a significant bequest in her will. In 2019, this congregation's board decided to allocate the bequest in 3 equal parts. The first would help reduce the congregation's mortgage from the 2012 renovation. The second would fund a 3-year multicultural initiative, eventually led by Team Dynamics. And the third would establish a Currier Fund for Racial Justice. And over the last 2 years, the board has been working to define what this fund for racial justice can be. And what we keep coming back to is this idea of reparations. Now, reparations are an economic answer to a moral problem. But at their roots, the moral questions that the Currier Fund is meant to address are inseparable from economics. There's no amount of money that a church can raise that will fix what has happened. Unity Church is not going to give the state of Minnesota back to the Dakota people. But by finding ways to support reparations work in the community, we're saying that we want to be a part of repairing what is broken. Here in Saint Paul, the City Council has established a Saint Paul Community Reparations Commission. The language in the resolution is to advise the mayor and city on strategies to repair the damage caused by the public and private systemic racism among the American descendants of chattel slavery. The commission is engaged in reparations at multiple levels, including developing a harms report that will tell the story in concrete economic terms about the harms that are the legacy of slavery. And over the last year and a half, Unity Church has engaged with the commission, asking to support their work. And this fall, the board of this church voted to give $100,000 from the Courier Fund to that commission as an act of reparation and repair. And that is not the end of the story of our work with reparations. It's the beginning of it. And there are 3 stumbling blocks that usually come up about at this point when we start concretely talking about reparations for historic harms. First, I wasn't there. I didn't directly contribute to the harms we're talking about today, so I don't need to worry about fixing them. If somebody has given you a gift, say a new TV, and you discover that it was stolen from your neighbor's house, what is your moral obligation? Surely the standard is not, well, I didn't commit the crime, so I'll just keep the TV. After all, I can watch my shows easier now, and don't we all need a break once in a while? That can't be the standard. I'm not from Minnesota. I didn't know anything about the Dakota War or exile until a few years ago. I was not taught in Michigan or New York public schools about that history. But that does not absolve me of responsibility. If I am even remotely serious about the implications of what we preach from this pulpit, then we collectively have an obligation to grapple with what it means to inherit a system built on theft. Second stumbling block. Why are we working with this particular way of doing reparations instead of X, Y, or Z? Why are we spending so much time on racial and economic justice rather than this other issue? Rather than focusing directly on how we heal our spirits, we're talking about racial justice an awful lot as a church these days. That's real. The part of me that thinks of trade-offs, of opportunity costs, budgets, and scarcity worries incessantly. But the beloved community that we imagine is grounded in abundance, not in scarcity. Because we know that they are interconnected. When we focus on one historic harm, we know that it is not at the cost of others, but it is tending to the whole. We know that if we don't do this work of racial justice and repair, then we are diminished ourselves. Because the other thing that King said, this time to an audience of Unitarian Universalists, was that we know that we are all caught up in a single garment of destiny. That what happens to you matters to me, that I am not fully who I am until you are fully who you can be. And so we're working with the Saint Paul Reparations Commission right now, but that does not in any way mean that we are cut off from all of the interconnected stories and places where we work. Third stumbling block, and the one that is most common in Unitarian Universalist circles. I get that this is important work, but I would do it differently. We want to know best. We think pretty highly of ourselves and our judgment. And so if we have resources to help fix a problem, we want to be part of deciding on the solution. And to be clear, this is about reparations, but it's also the conversation that I have with Unitarian Universalists in organizing spaces in every single state and congregation I have ever worked with. And the conversation that I constantly have with myself at about 2 o'clock in the morning. But back to the plow that's sitting up here with us. What does the end statement say? We yoke ourselves to the demands, sacrifices, and hard work of justice. We yoke ourselves. So remember how the plow works. The plow itself, the metal piece there, turning over the soil and bringing nutrients to the surface. Someone driving, holding on to those wooden handles and steering the whole thing. And then those of us yoked, about where I am here, tied to the front of that plow, pulling the work with our heart and mind and soul. We're up here pulling, not back there driving, in the end statement. And for those of us with privilege, this is the hardest single ask in our ends, because we really want to drive. We really want to hold on to the plow. We want to be right back there at those handles. Our liberal faith tradition puts huge importance on individual conscience and what we decide to do, what direction we decide to take. Writing in his work, Covenant Economics, Richard Horsley describes the challenge of American history and the liberal tradition this way. For the founders at the time of the Revolution and the framing of the Constitution, liberty may have meant mainly liberation from British tyranny. Freedom, however, quickly came to mean the freedom to pursue self-interest. A new faith was emerging that social concord could still be maintained when individuals sought their own private interests without worrying about the social economic consequences for others. This ideology of freedom as pursuit of self-interest reinforced and shaped the strong sense of individualism in United States society. That's the tradition that we come out of. Unitarianism and Universalism are both proud heirs of the liberal theological tradition that comes from the same social milieu that gave us political liberalism. It is all grounded in individualism. But just because we come from somewhere doesn't mean that we have to stay there. One of the repeated refrains at the board over the last year and a half has been a need to use this opportunity, this conversation about reparations, not as a way to give away money, but an invitation into transformation for the congregation. We've talked about Jan saying our greatest moments of transformation are our greatest moments of struggle. And so it's not enough to set up a kind of grant-making structure that will spend down the Courier Fund and then we'll be done with the work that leaves us unchanged. The hope is that engaging in this work of reparations moves us to a different way of being in the world that engages with the common welfare, not the freedom to pursue self-interest, that takes as its cue, we shall be known by the company we keep. Now, the call to yoke ourselves to justice, not as the driver, but as the engine, is a call of prophetic reframing. We will not build the beloved community through the same tools that got us to this place. It's only by telling a different story and participating in it differently going forward that we will help cash the check that will give us, upon demand, the riches of freedom and the security of justice. And to do that, we have to do the opposite of what the hymn told us. We have to let go of the handles of the plow. And we have to move up into the yoke. And when we get there, and when we get situated, then maybe we'll sing again. Our closing hymn is Guide My Feet. Would you please rise and sing together? So here's the hope at the end. We don't want to run this race in vain. And the way that we do that is by telling the story honestly. The way that we do that is by reframing the stories that we have told over and over. Because when we tell a true story, and when we engage in the work of repair, then we are building this thing. Then we are doing the work of the beloved community that we say we are about. And the moments of struggle are the moments of transformation. So go. Tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day. Go transformed. Go read some history. And come back next week. And we'll see you then. Amen.